Well, welcome along to Extra Time here on LCFC Radio and LCFC TV. After a disappointing weekend for Brendan Rodgers and for Leicester City, who fell to a 3-0 home defeat to Chelsea in the early kickoff on Saturday. During the course of the next hour or so here on Extra Time, Gerry, Taggart, Iwan, Roberts and myself will look to dissect that game and also look ahead to Thursday's Europa League clash with Legia Warsaw and also next week's Premier League game with Watford as well. We'll take a look at the other results in the Premier League and maybe a bit of a general Europa League, Champions League preview as well, if we have time for that. And they'll also go head-to-head, these two, at the end in our football jenga. Iwan, firstly, you weren't with us where you were at the weekend. I'm sure you were working somewhere else. Did you have a good couple of days?
I did. I had that long journey to Steve Walsh country, up to Preston. Steve Morrison's first game in charge on a full-time basis at Cardiff. And got a good win, to be fair. It got a good win. Good performance in the second half. Obviously, I kept an eye. Well, I watched the majority of the first half in the press room in Preston. I think it's safe to say it was one to forget, to be fair. But you know what, Dan? I look at that Chelsea side and they're the top side. I mean, if whoever finishes above them this season wins the Premier League for me. The wing backs, Chilwell and Reece James, are as good as anything that's out there. Defensively, since Thomas Tuchel's taken over, they're rock solid. A couple of disappointing goals in that first half conceded. You know, once again, I mean, Rudiger, he likes playing against Leicester, especially at that end of the pitch. You know, with his 2 goals in 2020 with his head. But once again, it's a couple of disappointing goals conceded. Set piece once again avoidable. Second half, I thought things improved. You know, a couple of chances. Daniel Amarty's 30-yard shot, which produced a top class save from Mendy. I mean, Jamie would be probably a little bit disappointed that he didn't do better with the headed chance that he had from Maddison's cross. But yeah, it was a bad day at the office. But when you look at what you're up against in Chelsea, they're a top side. They're a top side. So you've got to dust yourselves down now and get ready for Thursday.
Absolutely. I guess there's 2 ways to look at a 12:30 kickoff, Gerry, isn't there? You can say it's either the weekend ruined after that with losing that first game, or there was a little bit more time, I guess, on Saturday for you to have a relaxation and your Sunday as well. So did you have a nice weekend despite the result?
Yeah, pretty quiet. Standard weekend, walking the dog on a Sunday, and obviously, you know, we're all probably reflecting on the result, on the performance, which, you know, coming up against a really good Chelsea team. You know, a really slick, well organised Chelsea side, and you've got to be honest and say that Leicester were below par. You know, on Saturday. They just sort of lack that kind of cutting edge at the minute that we've been used to seeing. And, you know, if you are that little bit below par and Chelsea come into town, then you expect the worst. You know, and Ewan's described both goals well there. You know, there were 2 really avoidable goals. And you can pick, you know, faults in both those goals, especially because they were slightly, you know, off the pace. Both those goals were avoidable, but, you know, taking nothing away from Chelsea, they were in tip-top form on Saturday afternoon. Leicester, not quite so. Yeah,
it's something, Ewan, that we did address and we spoke about in the post-match show on Saturday. We said that when Leicester lose, if they lose to a very good team, we do praise that team, and it's only right that we do so now. You've already mentioned how good Chelsea were, how good of a side they are. They are the European champions. They're top of the Premier League, obviously, this season for a reason as well.
I think they've got strength in depth. You know, when you look at what when he took over, Thomas Tuchel, you know, took over from Frank Lampard, and a Frank Lampard Chelsea side, which gave youth an opportunity because there was reasons for that. They scored plenty of goals, but they also conceded plenty under Frank. I think in his only full season at the club, Dan, I think they had the worst defensive record in the top half of the Premier League, even though they finished 4th. I think Brighton and Palace conceded the same amount of goals, and that wasn't really addressed. For some reason, Frank Lampard wasn't playing Rudiger, which leaves you scratching your head, to be fair, when you've seen how well he's played since Tuchel's come in. And that's what they're a well-drilled machine. They all know their individual roles in the team. They know their collective responsibility. And we saw that, especially in that first half. The first 45 minutes, I think that's as good a performance as I've seen in the Premier League this season from a team. But I think from a Leicester point of view, Dan, I think it shows just how important Youri Tielemans is for this team. You know, his omission or his absence in that team was a massive, massive blow. You know, you can give him the ball anywhere. He keeps the ball. He recycles the ball. He keeps it moving. And in that first half, Leicester didn't do those things well enough. They gave the ball away too cheaply. And if you give it to teams like Chelsea who have got quality going forward, if you give it to them, then you'll get punished. You'll get punished. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, Gerry, I know you were disappointed, weren't you, particularly in the first half performance from Leicester?
Yeah, I think, you know, everyone, and you quite rightly to mention the two wing backs, but for me, Jorginho and Kante ran the show, and they enabled the wing backs to get going on the front foot. And it was that midfield area where Leicester just failed. And with Tielemans, especially when you're in possession of the ball, he's the one player, and this is taking nothing away from Samari and Ndidi, but Tielemans is the one player in the Leicester team that can receive the ball in high pressure situations and get Leicester going on the front foot. And we didn't have that on Saturday. If you look at Jorginho and Kante's movement to try and get on the ball and get Chelsea going, that's where the difference was. You know, I think Leicester just, when they were trying to play from the back, were just struggling for options on too many occasions. Chelsea were playing a high press, very efficient at it, and Leicester just struggled to get any momentum in the game. And without Tielemans receiving the ball in those high pressure, high pressing situations, and then being able to wriggle his way out of it, and then breaking that press and getting Leicester on the front foot, it just became an almighty struggle in the first half. You know, with Maddison coming on in the second half, things improved. We got more control of the ball in the attacking half of the pitch, and then, you know, we caused a few issues. But by then, when you're 2-0 down, and on listening to Thomas Tuchel, he'll be, you know, well aware that going in at 2-0 psychologically is probably one of the most cagiest scores you can be going at half time. We spoke about this before, because psychologically you're thinking the game's over, but that wouldn't happen with Thomas Tuchel. He'd be well aware of that. They came out, they didn't chase the game in the second half, Chelsea. They just sat in, were solid, you know, they dealt with Leicester's pressure and possession in the attacking half of the pitch, and then obviously when needed to, they just stepped it up and went and scored the third, which obviously means game over. But I think obviously when the second goal goes in from Kante, which again was avoidable, taking nothing away from Kante because he was excellent, then I think you have to say it was an uphill struggle from there.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2-0 lead, Gerry, obviously, and Iwan referenced a couple of the chances that Dan Amati, I say chance, it wasn't really a chance, was it, for Dan Amati, but the effort from Daniel Amati, the chance for Jamie Vardy. If one of those go in at that time, there was a little bit of momentum was gathering, wasn't there, Gerry, just in that little 5 or 10 minute period at the beginning of the second half. Maybe if one of those goes in, something could have happened in the game, but it needed to come early, didn't it?
Yeah, it needed to come early, you're right, because all the momentum was with Chelsea up until those moments in the game. And then when you're scratching around and, you know, chances are very few and far between for a centre forward or for, you know, for anybody on the pitch really, then you have to maximise them. And unfortunately, just half a foot one way, you know, with Jamie's header. You know, there's actually decent pressure on Dan Amati's shot when he gets a really clean strike, where there's actually a bit of pressure on that strike. So if there was no pressure on that strike, does he get a cleaner strike? Is he able to place it, you know, more into the corner? Does he make it more difficult for Mendy to try and get on? These are all the variables you have to take into consideration. And unfortunately, it just didn't happen. It just wasn't Leicester's day in front of goal, but the opportunities were very few and far between, which we sort of knew was going to happen. There was one or two opportunities in the first half as well, where Vardy gets down the left and whips a decent ball in. And I think it's Rudiger makes a great clearance. That ball could have went anywhere, but he makes a really good defensive clearance. So yeah, chances very few and far between. But it's when chances are very few and far between, you have to stay in the game. You know, you have to make sure you're in the game, you're competing. You have to make it a struggle for the opposition, especially in that midfield area. And that's the area of the game where Leicester didn't compete to the levels that, you know, we're used to seeing.
Do you think if Brendan Rodgers had his time again on Saturday morning, Ewan, he would do something a little bit different in the midfield? Or obviously he always trusts the players that he puts out and the formation and the system that he puts out. With a little bit of hindsight, would he do something different, do you think?
I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing, Dan, isn't it? I mean, could he have maybe played Maddison and either taken Lookman or I mean, it's hard to take Harvey Barnes out after his performance in Leeds. And Harvey was always going to start. And, you know, you've been to Leeds, you've performed well there, come away with a good point. You know, I watched Leeds yesterday at Spurs, and I thought they were outstanding in the first half, and I thought Spurs got away with one yesterday. So it's no easy game going to Ellen Road. So I think he looked at that performance and he wanted to keep it the same. He didn't want to make too many changes. And I think changes, once again, has been forced upon Brendan because of injuries to key players. And I just don't want to harp on, don't want to make excuses, because I know Brendan Rodgers won't make excuses. He'll just get on with the job, get on with a task in hand. But there's some key players that are missing for Leicester City. But maybe if he'd put James Maddison just in front of Samari and Ndidi and gone with two up front, which he has done when, you know, he's played Jamie Vardy and Iheanacho, which they did in the second half, to be fair. But as you say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And Brendan picked a team that he thought would be capable and with the quality that Leicester have, would have been able to get something from that game. He didn't expect the lads to be as off the pace of the game as what they were, especially in that first half.
Dan, this is where managers cannot win in this situation. Brendan Rodgers would have left no stone unturned to try and find the right formula to compete with Chelsea, with the squad that he had available to him at that time. And he would have toyed with options of playing two up front and Maddison in behind. He wouldn't have expected to be 2-0 down at half-time. He would have expected Leicester to have more of a say in that first half. And so when you get in at half-time, it's then, I suppose, it's easy to go and change things to try and get yourselves back in the game, or to try and get more of a hold in the game, and people to turn around and say, well, why didn't he do that from the beginning of the game? Why didn't he start in Maddison and put Iheanacho up front alongside Vardy? Very, very easy to say it after the fact. But you can rest assured that Brendan would have toyed with all those scenarios and came up with the one that he thought was best to start the game.
Again, a bit like Ewan just said, you know, don't want to make excuses all the time, but you look back in the past, really, in Brendan Rodgers' whole reign, particularly the last 2 years in particular, he's almost been managing with a hand tied behind his back. The amount of injuries, Gerry, that Leicester have had, particularly at key moments. You look back at Ricardo Pereira's injury just before Project Restart. That kind of started this whole injury curse almost. And there's just been so many, even this season, heading into the season, things look quite good. Wesley Fofana picks up that horrible injury in that pre-season game. He's just had no luck for a couple of years now.
No, I you know, you forget about Ricardo. So there's two players that automatically you would have thought would have started. Ricardo and Tielemans missing. Two of your most technically gifted players missing from a massive game against a very good, efficient Chelsea team. If Ricardo plays, and again, this is nothing to do with Mark Albright. Mark Albrighton's been out, hasn't played for a month. I think it was before Saturday. But you're thinking, if Ricardo's on the pitch, would he have pushed Chilwell back further? Would he have not have been allowed to get us forward as much? And you're probably saying the answer is yes. And so just with those two players themselves, those two technically gifted players that Leicester possess who weren't on the pitch on Saturday, left a massive hole in terms of Leicester being able to get on the ball and push Chelsea back towards their own goal. And that was one of the key areas where Leicester weren't at their best at the weekend.
You even look at Chelsea as well, and they were without Lukaku, of course. Timo Werner was on the bench. Are they, in a weird way, sometimes a better team without a main focal striker? I say that, but when Lukaku's played, they've also been brilliant this season as well. But they did win the European Cup without really a recognised striker.
And they have got strength and depth. They've got quality all over the pitch with the creativity that they've got in their teams. You look at we've spoken about the wing backs. I mean, they create so many chances. They've got quality in that final third. And I mean, me personally, I probably would say this, being a former centre forward, I think you are better with a number 9, if you like, up there. A natural finisher. That's what Lukaku is. His goal scoring record. He's only 28. Is absolutely ridiculous. I think he does offer so much for any team that he plays in, but it hasn't really affected Chelsea. And I don't know how long he's going to be out for. I was delighted he wasn't fit for Belgium and Gerry. I put Gerry in this sentence as well. I was delighted they were both missing from the Wales-Belgium game last Tuesday night. But they've got quality everywhere, and they've coped superbly without. They'll score goals. They've got goal scorers in their teams, whether they're natural number 9s or natural finishers. They've got too much quality and creativity not to be scoring goals.
A couple of weeks ago, Gerry, I asked you and Tony Cotty on the show after the Leeds game who you fancied for the title at that stage. Has watching Chelsea live changed your opinion? Because you said Liverpool, didn't you, I think, a couple of weeks ago?
I've got to stick with Liverpool. There's still a long way to go. 26 games or something like that left in league games left. It's going to be tight. Liverpool were fantastic, weren't they? At the weekend as well. There's going to be ups and downs, ebbs and flows. Man City still in it. Yes, Chelsea are in the box seat at the minute. And yes, they look very good, but there's 2 or 3 teams in there that could still easily win this title. But yeah, and Chelsea are one of 3. It's between them 3 teams. Chelsea are in the box seat, but we don't know what's going to happen between now and the end of the next 26 games. That's the key. So I have to stick with Liverpool because they were fantastic on Saturday.
Yeah, I just half wondered if seeing them live maybe it changed your opinion. It does make a bit of a difference, I think, when you're not commentating on it, Gerry. Obviously, it was Matt's turn, wasn't it, the weekend? So you were sat just in the press box, literally just watching the game. You're able to see a little bit more, I guess. You're able to watch things that when you co-commentating you don't normally watch. Yeah,
definitely. You can dissect the game in different areas. You're not always from the ball when you're not commentating. Obviously, when you're commentating, you have to speak about what's actually happening there and then. And so your gaze is taken away from other areas of the pitch. So when you're sitting in the crowd, I always like to see what's going on elsewhere on the pitch, how people set up, either when they're in the possession of the ball or when they're defending, and not always following the ball. Because the person on the ball is a creator. What goes on and how the chances get put away, or when those crosses or passes come into the box, it's all about the movement of the other players on the pitch. So it's a really good way of dissecting and pulling apart a game of football when you're sitting watching it. And that's why, for me, it was the 2 midfielders. Yes, obviously the 2 wing backs were phenomenal, but it was the way Kante and Jorginho, for me, just worked that space, that midfield space, to enable them to run off the back. Kante in particular running off the back of Leicester's midfield. Jorginho coming deep, moving from side to side to get space, to bring the wing backs in or to put players like Kante in. Just a really, really good display.
Yeah, I think that was one thing, Iwan, when Jorginho was first signed by Chelsea. A lot of Chelsea fans were scratching their heads thinking, why is he the holding one when you've got Kante, who's arguably the best in the world at that? But you can kind of see why now, and particularly with performances like that at the weekend, the way Kante is so good at getting up and down, Jorginho is also excellent in that pivot role.
Why would you have Kante holding? I mean, he's got 3 lungs. He's unbelievable. I mean, and Leicester fans know better than anybody the energy that N'Golo Kante brings to a team. And he did take a lot of stakes, Jorginho, to be fair. And when Sarri took him there for a lot of money, but he's winning people over. You know, he was integral to that Italian team who won the European Championships in the summer. You know, never gives the ball away. I mean, he's very similar to Yuri Tielemans. You know, cool under pressure. You know, he'll accept the ball whether he's got opposition players around him, as he just keeps the ball moving. Finds a blue shirt, and that's never a bad habit. But I was just thinking, and Chelsea deserved the 3 points. I don't think anybody will argue with that. But it could have been a slightly different story. And I'm looking at that Lookman disallowed goal, the offside goal that he scored. Had he gone a split second later, and he didn't need to go as quick, because he's quick, Dan. He didn't need to go when he did. He could have sort of watched that build-up, and I can't remember who put the initial ball in.
It was Mark O'Brien. I think he was expecting maybe Mark to put it in first time.
Yeah, and it was a fantastic ball. But had he just taken a split second and then gone, and I tell you what, even though, it was a poor first half performance, you go in at 2-1, and it's a completely different complexion for that second half. It's a completely different atmosphere in the King Power. And Tags has said earlier, 2-0 is a really precarious scoreline. You get the next one, the 3-0 game over 9 times out of 10. But then if the opposition get it, it's 2-1. It's game on then. So that for me, that was a big moment in the game. Had he sort of just taken a little bit more time, because as I say, he's got the pace. He's not like me. He doesn't need 5 yards start. He can delay his run slightly and then go. And had he done that and brought Leicester within a goal at half time, I think there would have been a completely different atmosphere in the stadium.
I might be wrong. I was just trying to quickly look. Was that at 1-0 as well? Or was that at 2-0? Was it that moment?
I've got a feeling it might have been at 2.
Right. Let's have a look. No, it was at 1-0.
Oh, 1-0. Sorry, Dad. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. But still, it was at 1-0. So
it's a massive moment.
I mean, that even more emphasises your point, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. It's a massive moment in the game, and he's a young man still learning his trade. I think, and that's the difference. If you've got Jamie Vardy, the furthest of the 3 up front in that position, I think Jamie sees it, because that's what he's done throughout his career, and he's as quick as Lookman. And I think it would have been not saying it might not have changed the result at the end of the day, but it would definitely have changed the atmosphere in the stadium.
That was just a case of 2 players not knowing each other that well in regards to, obviously with Albrighton being out for a month, and then Lookman, a new player coming in. I don't know how many times they've been on the pitch at the same time, but it won't have been a lot, that's for sure. Whereas you're right, you and Jimmy Vardy would have known exactly what Mark Albrighton was going to do. Yeah. He would have known that Albrighton likes to take a touch and then deliver. When he's static, anyway, probably not when he's running onto balls, but when the ball's coming to him and he's static, then sometimes he likes to get a touch. Vardy would have been more better versed at reading that situation. That's all it was. It was just a misreading of a situation. He wanted it delivered first time, and Mark obviously took the touch and then delivered it. It was just, they just weren't on the same wavelength at that key moment, another key moment in the game.
Yeah, shame for Ademola Lookman. Yet another goal for him disallowed in the Premier League because of offside. At half-time, Gerry, both you and Tony were calling for a change at least, or changes. But those changes did come. But as we've said, to be fair to Brendan Rodgers, there was that momentum that we've spoken about at the beginning of that second half. They just weren't able to get that goal. Yeah,
they just couldn't get a foothold in the game as regards to, keeping the ball, keeping possession of the ball, and then breaking those midfield lines and getting in behind those midfield lines and getting turned and getting at the back line. And so bringing Maddison on and playing in between the midfield and the back three give Leicester an opportunity to do that. And that's why you've seen that improvement. Also bringing Kelechi on as well, occupying another one of the centre halves. It improved. But Chelsea just dug in then, didn't they? And that's what we've been accustomed to seeing with Chelsea, that they're very hard to break down. And when they need to dig in, and when they need to be solid and not, exciting on the eye going forward, that's exactly what they did. They just did enough to dig in, to consolidate, cope with the pressure that Leicester threw at them, and then obviously hit them once again, go 3-0 up. So, but it was a right ploy because we couldn't get a foothold in that first half. We couldn't get on the ball, rotate the ball, rotate possession, give Chelsea a headache. It didn't happen often enough. We were just talking about a few opportunities that Leicester had, and obviously one a disallowed goal. But we're used to seeing more, and that's the thing. There's like an expectancy from Leicester now that to cause the top teams more issues. And because that didn't happen, then Brendan, I suppose, his hands were tied. He had to make those changes and had to try and not throw caution to the wind completely, but, throw a little bit of caution to the wind and say, well, we may leave ourselves open a little bit, but we'll have to try and get back in the game.
Yeah, I think that's probably what frustrated the fans the most, Ewan, is that exactly as Gerry is saying there, they just weren't able to get that foothold. They weren't able to create as many chances as what the Leicester fans are used to seeing.
Dan, you're up against the best defensive team in the Premier League, one of the best defensive teams in Europe. I'd say that they're very well organised, they're well drilled. We can speak about the quality they've got and the goals that they've got in the team going forward, and the pace. And the positive forward play that Chelsea are producing at the minute. But defensively, they're rock solid. I mean, they've conceded 4 goals in 12 Premier League games. So, for Leicester to go on and win that game, they had to score 3 in that second half. And as I said to you, Chelsea have conceded 4 all season in the Premier League.
And only one on the road. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, only one on the road.
That goes to show what a top... And we, forwards win your games, defences win your championships. And that's why I'm looking at that Chelsea side. And at the minute, I think they are the team to beat. They are the team to beat.
That's impressive and very big of you, Ewan, as a former striker, to admit that in front of a defender. But we'll move on quickly from that. Let's have the chance, don't they, in a few days, Gerry, to right the wrongs, I guess, of Saturday when they play Legia Warsaw in the Europa League.
Yeah, I think best thing to do to get Saturday out of the way is hit the reset button, try and put it in the back of your mind, chuck it in the recycling bin, whatever, fully concentrate. Because again, there's still a fantastic opportunity for Leicester to reach, the knockout stages of the Europa League. Big game. Again, we were expecting Leicester to turn Moscow over a couple of weeks ago. It didn't happen. Moscow showed a real stubborn side to their game, which we didn't see in Moscow, to be fair. But another opportunity. Leicester obviously losing to Legia Warsaw in the away leg, but still a great opportunity. So full focus on Thursday night. And this is when you're involved in these competitions, and you do suffer disappointment, you have to move on quickly. Because again, on Thursday, this is a big game coming up.
I'm just going to read out this stat on Legia Warsaw because I know that Ewan's probably got similar ones as well. So I want to get there before Ewan does. Since Legia beat Leicester in September, they've played 9, only won once. They've lost 8 of those. That one win did come in the cup as well. They conceded in the 96th minute yesterday to lose. That's their 7th league defeat in a row. It ties an all-time club record. The last time they lost 7 games in a row was 1936, and they were relegated that year. So I got that in.
I'm fuming, Dan. I spent all morning yesterday getting all my paperwork and my stats, and So I saw their form and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I think the second from bottom, and they only by goal difference. I think the second lowest scorers in the division. I think it's the perfect game now. We spoke about when a few weeks ago when Leicester had won 4 games on the spin, scoring plenty of goals in doing so, and we sort of said, "Oh yeah." Get the feeling that the club's turned the corner with the performances and that magnificent result against Manchester United at the King Power. You think, oh, here we go, season starting now. But then no wins in their last 4. It just needs something to once again kickstart this season because it's been sort of stop start. And I do think this is the perfect game for them. They're playing against a team that are lower than the Snake's Belly confidence wise, and going into the game, Leicester will probably look at it, well, if we win this game, that will put us on 8 points. That will mean we're 2 in front of Warsaw. And I think Warsaw, they play Spartak at home in their last game. And the way Warsaw are playing at the minute, you wouldn't put it against Spartak, especially if it's the Spartak that turned up at the King Power a couple of weeks ago to get there and get something from that game. So I think the carrot for Leicester City on Thursday is 3 points, and you're nearly in the knockout stages.
It is a staggering record at the moment, this run, Gerry, that Legia are going through. They're the most successful team in Poland, and they're second bottom, and they've lost 7 in a row in the league.
Incredible. Obviously, I wasn't getting all my stats ready yesterday.
You had the golf course tags.
No, I wasn't.
That's later today, I think, Iwan.
I was sat outside with a coffee yesterday morning, just watching the sun come up, actually. So relaxing. But again, what an opportunity. And full focus has to go on this game, because if it does, and Walsall come to Leicester in the kind of form that you lads have just mentioned, then and Leicester get over the line against Walsall, what a confidence boost that will give them after the defeat to Chelsea. And so Brendan will realise that. He'll know exactly what's coming into town. He'll know the record that Walsall are on at the minute. And he'll understand what an opportunity this is to get a bit of momentum back into the dressing room, a bit of confidence back into the players, and then start to try and move forward again. A la after the Manchester United result and performance a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we saw what Legia did produce, though, at their place, Gerry, in that 1-0. Were you away that one?
Yeah, I didn't see it. I seen the goal, and obviously there was a few missed chances, wasn't there, on behalf of Leicester?
Yeah, I can't remember if you were at that one, Ewan, but I think you look at it, it was 1-0 to Legia and disappointment, but Leicester did have a lot of chances that evening. Legia only really created that moment, and the goal came from nothing as well. So Leicester will fancy their chances and fancy themselves to beat Legia, I'm sure, on Thursday.
Yeah, I was looking, I think before the last game, I was looking at the group, and I think Warsaw, they were top. And I think they'd scored 2 goals in their 3 games.
Yeah.
But as you say, defensively, they've been solid. They haven't conceded, I don't think. But it's a different story now. And Tags will tell you when you're a player and you're as low in confidence as what they must be with this, especially yesterday. You made a great point. They lost that game yesterday in the last minute, and that's what happens to you, Dan, when you're in the sort of run that Warsaw. I mean, you can't buy a result. You can't buy a win. Everything, and you tend to think everything's going against you. And okay, Leicester's home form, a little bit like last season, isn't great. 2 wins or 3 wins in 9 games in all competitions this season. And they do need a performance to, say, kickstart now. We're getting towards December, Christmas time, that busy period. And if they can get a good, positive result, get 3 points on the board, nearly qualified for the knockout stage. You look at the next 4 league games, Watford on Sunday at home, Southampton away, Villa away, Newcastle at home. 4 games there that if Leicester are bang at it, if they've got players coming back from injury, key players that have been missing, they've got a good chance of getting some good points from those 4 games and closing the gap on those Champions League spaces.
And that run can start, hopefully, Gerry, on Thursday.
Yeah, it has to. You know, I think when you've suffered a defeat like you have done against the league leaders, the favourites, and it's at home, then you have to pick yourselves up quickly. And as Iwan already said, it's probably the perfect game on Thursday night. You know, with Warsaw, you know, probably feeling the effects of that defeat at the weekend more than Leicester, let's be honest, because you've gone from, okay, you're on a bad losing streak, but you've gone from in the 95th minute thinking, okay, we'll take a point. It's a start. It ends that losing streak. So you're thinking, okay, as a player, you're saying, we'll take that point and we'll move on from there. In the 95th, and then in the 96th minute, disaster. And so the confidence just literally drains all the way out of you. And so they will be feeling even worse in that Legia Warsaw dressing room than there will be in the Leicester City dressing room. So yeah, the perfect fillet. It's at home. They won't want to travel here in the form that they're in, hopefully. And they have to go out and find some sort of confidence, which I'm sure Brendan will give them and the players will have anyway, to a certain degree. And believe that they can get a result against this Warsaw team.
I am going to play devil's advocate, Iwan. You're in this bad run that the Legia Warsaw are in and they can't get going. This offers them a different competition, something else to look at. You're coming to a Premier League team, playing against Leicester City, playing against the likes of Jamie Vardy. They're going to be right up for it, aren't they? As much as they'll be low on confidence because of the run that they're on, surely coming to a Premier League ground will do enough.
And I think the way they will look at it, 3 points and they've qualified. You know, 3 points and Leicester cannot catch them. And then it makes it, and I'm not even going to tempt fate, it makes it really difficult then. If Leicester were to lose on Thursday, it makes it really difficult with that last game being away in Naples to qualify. So for Warsaw, I think it's a win or bust. I think they'll come to the King Power. I think they'll go for it. I think they have to go for it. I think they've got to be maybe more attack, and they will look at Leicester's form. Haven't won in 4, you know, lost 2, drawn 2, beaten by a good Chelsea side, as we've spoken about on Saturday lunchtime. So they will come thinking, well, you know, hey, we're in bad form, you know, and you've read the stats out before I got a chance. So they might think, well, you know, this is a game we've already beaten them once, beaten them at home. You know, we've got the, I won't say the hoodoo, the jinx on them, having only played them once. But I think that's the thing for Warsaw. If they can get 3 points, then they finish in the top 2 and through to the knockout stages.
Right, let's move away from Leicester City then, Gerry. We always take a look at some of the other games that have taken place in the Premier League at the weekend. What caught your eye?
Well, I listened to the first half of Liverpool. I think, yeah. Well, I was still in the car actually, and then I watched the second half. So I'm going to go for Liverpool. I thought, obviously, Arsenal coming to town a couple of weeks ago, I thought were very good at King Power Stadium, and I thought this might be a difficult game for Liverpool, but it didn't turn out to be the case, did it? Liverpool were imperious at Anfield. So yeah, that was Liverpool at their best, needing to get a result. 6 points behind Chelsea before the whistle was blown, and they needed a big result against a resurgent Arsenal team, and I thought they were outstanding.
How about you, Iwan?
I think that one is a statement win from Liverpool. I think Arsenal, they did a lot of talking before the game, Dan. And if there's a lesson ever to be learned, do your talking on the pitch. Arteta had come out and he'd said a couple of things in the week. I think I can't remember the fullback's name, who said that Mo Salah, he wasn't going to have a kick in the game. Just got to be careful. Yeah, just got to be careful. So, that was a proper statement result performance from Liverpool. I think the Watford Man U game, my first club, great win for the Hornets. Claudio Ranieri's gone in, and after that initial hammering that they took from Liverpool at Vicarage Road, they've been outstanding. Went to Everton and battered Everton. It could have been 5-1 against Man U with the penalty save from De Gea. Dean Smith getting his first win in his first game at Norwich, went 1-0 down after a couple of minutes to Southampton, the team that he lost in his last game at Aston Villa as manager. So that was a good win for them. Stevie Gerrard obviously getting his first win at Aston Villa, and Ollie Watkins getting on. But what a weekend in the Premier League! There's so many goals, weren't there? Burnley 3, Brentford 3, unbelievable.
Newcastle.
Yeah.
What was that in the end?
3-3 as well.
3-3.
Burnley Palace was 3-3. Newcastle Brentford was 3-3.
That's value for money in the Premier League, boys.
Yeah.
You look at the Alan Saint-Maximin at Newcastle, Gerry. He got the equaliser, didn't he? He's understandably very much a fan's favourite up there.
Yeah, he's a quality player. He is a standout player at Newcastle, you have to say. And he's got the headband to match. I'm loving the colourful headbands that he wears, but he backs it up. I mean, he was an absolute thorn. Again, I watched the highlights of that game, and I thought he was excellent. And he obviously rounded it off with a really good finish at the end there. And he started the move really, and finished it. So fantastic talent, and it's a good job. The new owners have come in when they did, because he's definitely one player that a lot of clubs would be earmarking for. Can we go and get Saint-Maximin, because he is a talent.
One of the games we haven't mentioned is Wolves 1, West Ham 0, because probably out of all of the games that took place and all of the stories, it had the least headlines to it. But a good win, though, for Wolves. And I'm sure you're a big fan of Raul Jimenez.
It's just great to see him back, Dan, to see him back to his best. I mean, it was a horrendous injury, a career-ending injury, when he fractured his skull against Arsenal. I think he's been out for 8, 9, 10 months. I think the club have been superb with him. They haven't rushed him back. And you can't rush a player back when he's had that type of injury. But they had a bit of a sticky start, didn't they? They came to the King Power and lost to Leicester on the opening weekend. But all of a sudden, things are starting to click. I think they're up to 6 now in the Premier League. They're in fine form, and to beat West Ham, probably the informed team in the Premier League under David Moyes. 2 weeks ago they were beating Liverpool. Giving Liverpool their first taste of defeat in the Premier League. David Moyes has done an absolutely unbelievable job. They've picked up from where they left off last season, so that's a cracking result for Wolverhampton.
Right, we're coming towards the end of extra time then, here on LCFC Radio and LCFC TV, which means only one thing. These two will go head-to-head in football. Jenga, I can't remember who was... Tony came out on top, didn't he, Gerry? A couple of weeks. It was a good one, though, and it went a long way.
I took him to the wire, as I say.
Absolutely. Right, with the return of European football this week, I want the two of you to name for me all of the teams in the Champions League.
Oh, you swine, Dan.
I had a feeling you might have read it, Ewan, and thought I was going to say Europa League. So
I've gone for the Europa.
In the Champions League. And Gerry, you can kick us off, please.
Bayern Munich.
Liverpool.
Chelsea.
Manchester United.
PSG.
Ooh, good shout. Inter Milan.
Is it God, I've got too many things going through my head now. Too many teams. Leon.
No, they're in the Europa League.
There's so many tags. There's so many.
I almost, to save embarrassment, don't want to read out. I'm not going to read them all out. But we've missed AC Milan, Ajax, Atletico, Barcelona,
Munich,
Dortmund, Juventus, Lille, Man City.
Lille, that was it.
Another few. Yeah.
Lille, not Leon, Lille.
Lille.
he just wants to go and play golf, Dan.
Yeah.
What, me?
Yeah, you got tee off time at 11 o'clock. You've done it on purpose.
Well, it's ended there. Ewan, that's another win. You've gone from.
Well done, Ewan.
That's three on the spin boys now.
The hat trick, yeah. Okay.
Blow my own trumpet.
Are you on next week? I can't remember. Or in a couple of weeks?
I'm working Sunday.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
To
Two of my former clubs, Stan, going head to head.
Former clubs as well. Gerry, you'll be about for the game next week. Thursday and presumably Sunday as well. Thursday against Legia Warsaw in the Europa League is an 8 o'clock kickoff, which means LCFC TV's coverage starts from 6:30. So do join us for that. But thanks as ever to Gerry Taggart and to the hat-trick winner, Iwan Roberts. We'll see you both later, guys. Thank you very much.
Dear boys.